Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with clinical care coordinator, author, and workshop leader Amos Smith. In his late teens and 20s, he was a backpacker and mountain climber. Oftentimes, on mountain vistas, he had an unmistakable, intense feeling that he was a part of something sacred and mysterious that was much larger than himself. This led him to explore meditation and Quaker Silent Meetings for worship. These days, he is many things: a family man, hiker, seasoned centering prayer practitioner, retreat facilitator, weightlifter, financial consultant, and author. He gets into all of this and more. Enjoy this interview.
Well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely. So before we get into your life as an author and a leader and a coordinator, I want to know how you did during COVID. You know, what did that time period do for you? How did you survive? And how has it changed you now that we're reemerging out of it?
COVID, it just made me realize that all of these people, you know, because for so long I've been teaching the benefits of solitude and silence, and especially disciplined silences, meditation. And it just made me realize that now people are forced to be hermits. I mean, they're forced, you know, to be in some kind of seclusion. It's just an opportune time to go into silences and to spend time in meditation. So that's one part of COVID. Is it's really given me a sense that meditation, there's no better time than now as far as people having the time and having the opportunity to do it, because before it was, carving, some chunk out of the schedule. And now, I mean, people are stuck at home and it's just a perfect opportunity. But yeah, as far as me, myself, I mean, I don't know, it's been very tumultuous. My father passed away. My mother passed away. My wife's mother passed away. The only one that was really COVID related was my dad, but so there's been a lot of loss. But that's what deep forms of silence and meditation teach, is that all of life is really the art of letting go. And so the better you can let go, the better you can make the best of this present moment.
So let's find out a little bit about exactly what you do. So I'm going to take you and put you in front of a bunch of kids at a career day, grade school kids. And one of the kids looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living and how are you qualified to do it?" How would you answer that kid?
So my day job is that I'm a counselor. I'm a licensed counselor in the state of Washington. And I counsel at-risk youth. So I counsel teenagers who have suicidal tendencies, who have chemical dependency challenges, who have domestic abuse, all kinds of struggles, and some of the kids I counsel are homeless. So that's what I do as far as my day job. And my wife is a professor of philosophy. And she and I are very close, and we talk a lot about many aspects of philosophy and religion. But I would tell those kids though that my fascination throughout my life has been I would say spirituality, mysticism. I'm currently a Quaker and have been for a number of years, and I was a Quaker for about a decade in the 90s. But I've returned to a tradition which has always valued silence and has silent meetings once a week. And there's just something powerful about having silence in your life in one way or another, whether it's 20 minutes of meditation a day or whether it's an hour a week for silent worship. But it helps me be a better counselor, and I think it would help the kids in front of me, if I was at some kind of a classroom situation. It would help them in their life in many different ways, especially in their relationships.
So, as somebody that dispenses therapy and and strategies for people to help them in their lives at a pretty dire situation. How do you balance all of that with, you have this life and you have these feelings and you have the id, ego, superego you need to feed. How do you balance that with giving out what you need to help people out, yet make sure that you're satisfied and that you're full?
Well, I think satisfaction, that's a loaded word, because most people, that what they think is satisfaction is really just surface level stuff. And so they think, I went on this awesome vacation. It was just so satisfying. And not really. It was just something on the surface. For deep satisfaction is only possible when, you go deep within the subconscious mind and you go deep in silence and you find something there that is a far deeper peace than anything that can be experienced by the senses. And once you have caught that bug, once you've experienced that silence and the depth of that peace, nothing else can compete. None of the so-called satisfactions of this life can compete at all. My teacher Thomas Keating would say that often. He said, the senses and the various satisfactions of the senses, they're nothing compared to the depth of silence that is available. And it's really sad because, people in the East, they know this. They know this instinctively, and they cultivate it. And, there's many areas in the East where a year in the monastery is required, before you enter certain universities or certain, jobs or professions. They understand the profound necessity of silence and stillness and solidity and being grounded, because everything is fraying at the edges in our society, and people are bouncing off the walls, and when crisis comes, one kind or another, people don't know how to handle it because they don't have enough depth to handle it. But that's what silence and meditation can do, is it can give you that depth, that grounding, so that you're a solid pillar in the midst of whatever's going on.
So let's go back to your childhood. Tell me a little bit about where you were born and raised. I know that you were a backpacker and you were in the mountains. You did a lot of climbing and a lot of things in nature. So talk to me a little bit about how you got this motivation that obviously gave you a level of depth and tranquility to lead the life that you do as a therapist now.
Well, I grew up all over the world. My dad was in diplomatic service, so I was in countries like Bolivia and Indonesia and the Ukraine. My dad was the acting mission director in the Ukraine in the early 1990s, and so I spent a lot of time in other cultures, and that definitely does, I think, factor in, because I think most people have like a geographical homeland where they can return to and they can say, this is where my mom was born, this is where I grew up, this is the playground I played at, this was my school, and so on and so forth. But for me, I never really had that. I didn't have a geographic homeland because I had lived in so many different places. So to find an internal homeland, I think it was important to me, to find something that was unshakable and resilient and solid within was that much more important. Because if you have a sense of, in this crazy world, if you have a sense of solidity, with a geographic home, at least that's something. But in my case, I needed to find that homeland within. So
tell me who you would consider a hero or a role model for you.
Well, I think the top of my list would be two people, and it would be my it would be my teacher, Thomas Keating. He's the founder of Contemplative Outreach, and he's a Benedictine monk, and he's spent thousands of hours in meditation, and he exudes a profound peace. A friend of mine from Australia, when he encountered Keating for the first time, he was really shaken up by it. And I asked him after, I said, why are you so shaken up? And he said, well, I found what I've been seeking, for so long, and that I didn't even think existed in Christian tradition. I found a realized master. And I said, what do you mean? What did that look like? And he said, well, when I went into Keating's presence, automatically it was as if I'd been meditating for an hour, but I hadn't. I had just come from the mess hall. I had just come from lunch. But it was his presence that automatically put me in this silence. And, in India, they refer to that phenomenon as darshan. It's being in the presence of somebody who has, some level of realization and presence that's, not just rank or, office, but is actually based on experience. And so yeah, I would put Keating at the top of the list.
If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to talk to?
Well, I would like to talk. I would like to talk to the Dalai Lama, and partly, I actually tried that when I went to India in '95. I asked for an audience, and they didn't allow me, to see the Dalai Lama. Obviously, he's a busy person. Lots of people want to see him, but I don't know. I have this push-pull with the Dalai Lama. There's some of the things that he says that I really resonate with. There's other things that he says that I just find very troubling. So it would be good to, I guess get some clarity and to, have an in-depth conversation, with him about those things.
So I'm curious, there's been so many things, and I don't read deep into the Dalai Lama, but I've seen so many things that just may not make sense in our Western mindset, but make sense in the way that he practices spirituality. What would you consider something that you might even bring up or say you wouldn't agree with, or like you said, that bothered you? I'm just curious.
So he has often talked about how religion may not be necessary, and I think what he's yes. So I just think it's a common kind of almost knee-jerk response when there's so many problems with organized religions, and so when somebody encounters someone, something toxic or a toxic leader, they just recoil from religion altogether and say, it's not necessary. But you have to differentiate. I mean, like I've told people have said, well, I've given up on the church. I said, I said I've given up on probably more than 50% of the churches. I've given up on them. I wouldn't go into those sanctuaries, but there's a percentage, maybe let's say 20 or 30%. That I think there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of positive that's going on. So it's just, I don't know, it's a little too easy, and I guess the way I think of religion and spirituality is I think of religion, you could compare to the pitcher, and then spirituality is the water, and the water, of course, gives life. It gives life to plants, gives life to organisms. But you can't really deliver the water where you need to deliver it unless you have the pitcher. So the container or the pitcher, in other words, the religion, is important. You can't just say, we don't need the pitcher. All we need is the water. I mean, that it's just not practical. I mean, you do need the pitcher to bring the water to skillfully to those organisms that need it. So I guess that's one of my main things that I would want to have a dialogue with him about.
So you're obviously someone that's driven by the word. You're an author and a writer, and I'm curious, what was a book in your formative years that you read that really shook your foundation and made you discover the joy of, reading and wanting to write in that entire world?
Well, I really like the Quaker author Parker Palmer. He's written a bunch of books. One of his more famous books is Let Your Life Speak. I think my favorite book of his is Hidden Wholeness. and he's very very genuine, and just speaks openly about his severe depression, and the depression has it brought him to a clinic on occasion, and he was bedridden for a time, but he just makes a very clear, he conveys this sense that everything that's there in our life, including the so-called broken parts, they all fit together as a whole. And if we stiff arm certain aspects of our life, then we're never going to be fully integrated. But to cease from the caricatures or stereotypical labeling, good and bad, whatever, and just to accept our life as it is, as a whole, in its totality. He says that's that's the life he prizes, and he thinks that's really what the spiritual life is all about, is just accepting the various layers and not compartmentalizing.
So as a well-traveled, well-learned man as yourself, if you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger self from, say, your 20s, and you could give that younger version a piece of advice, and this isn't about regret, it's about taking the wisdom that you've gained over the years and giving it to your younger version, what would you tell that younger version?
I would say stay close to home. I said, you don't need to. I mean, I traveled hither and yon all over, but I really think, in hindsight, I should have just stayed close to home, where I knew my neighbors, where I knew the people, where I knew the streets, and I think it's unfortunate. It's one of the really unfortunate things about America is that the average American moves every what is it now, 4 or 5 years, and that's a real sense of displacement and a lack of roots. And I think it's good to just like my grandfather. My grandfather, where he was born in New York City, he never strayed an hour, or no, not an hour, a mile. It was a mile radius from where he was born. So his entire life, he lived within a mile radius of where he was born. That's I don't know. As time goes on, that's even though that may seem extreme, that seems like a better, more integrated approach. So
that's interesting, very interesting. So everyone has a perception of you. Your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are? Well,
one thing that I know, and there's been enough clients, and my wife is always telling me this, but I do have kind of a settled, peaceful kind of presence. I'm, and that's because I've spent thousands of hours in meditation, right? That's the thing I've really dedicated my life to, and some people would think, well, it's kind of like Jack and the Beanstalk, getting I don't know, getting those seeds to plant and grow this beanstalk. Why? There's so many more practical things you could be doing with your time. But it's totally made me who I am, and as a result of going into deep meditation, especially on retreats, there's what they call in the centering prayer community as unloading. And it's when you go to a deeper place of relaxation than is possible during sleep. And in that deep relaxation, you have, it almost, feels like almost like a vomiting kind of, sensation. But you'll have these deep tensions, and sometimes, your whole body will tense up, or some part of the body will shake. Or you'll have this deep, intense tension in the middle of your gut, and it's very hard to get through it. It's excruciating, really. But if you can breathe through it after sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes maybe a minute and a half, all of that tension will dissipate, and it's an extraordinary feeling. it's a feeling of some deep abiding tensions in the body finally releasing. And that's happened to me many times on retreat, and it's a very normal dynamic that happens for serious meditators. And as a result of that, over the years, the nervous system that was once so tense is now more or less healed. I mean, there's you're never completely there. There's more that can be done for sure, but there's this just a abiding sense of ease and relaxation and peace. And like a little side story here is I ran into this he's a meditator, but he's also a massage practitioner, and I ran into him in Berkeley, and we had just gone to see Thich Nhat Hanh, and we were talking about Thich Nhat Hanh, and he said, "Oh yeah, he had gone to Plum Village, and he was there in Plum Village with Thich Nhat Hanh, and he went to Thich Nhat Hanh and asked him. He said, I would like to do you some service. I'd like to give you a massage. Usually, Thich Nhat Hanh, given that he's a Buddhist monk, he usually always declines because there's something in their code that people are not supposed to do physical touch. But in this particular case, Thich Nhat Hanh made an exception. Why, he wasn't sure, but he allowed this man to do a massage for Thich Nhat Hanh, and it blew this man's mind, because all of his life he had worked on these different people, and every single person he'd ever worked on as a massage therapist always had tension in their body, every single one of them, without any exception. But Thich Nhat Hanh was categorically different. There was absolutely no tension anywhere in his body. He was loose as a goose, and this massage practitioner said he didn't even think that was possible. He didn't think that was humanly possible, and it changed his whole paradigm. And I guess that's the thing that I try to convey often, is that there is this possibility of and it's not just spiritual mumbo jumbo, but it's rooted in physiology. It's rooted in neurology. It's in our muscles, and that there's a deeper form of healing than most people realize is possible.
So my final question to you is this: what's been the best response you've gotten from a client throughout the years?
The best response of a client throughout the years. Well, there was this one client who had been, he'd been working with Western medicine for a while, but he had this ongoing stomach problem, and the Western pharmaceuticals weren't really working for him. So I recommended that he try the Master Cleanse. And, you just Google, Master Cleanse or Master Cleanse recipe or whatever. It's basically just, a concoction, of water and maple syrup and, I think a little cayenne pepper and a couple other things. But instead of eating, you just drink that for a week, and you just do a week-long Master Cleanse fast. And I thought it was a risk to advocate this, because what if it went wrong and it got back to my supervisor or something? But actually he went ahead and tried it, and it cured his stomach issue. And I always like it when there's when there's aspects of medicine or healing that people haven't really explored and don't really understand. And then when they try it, they get some great results. I mean, that's to me what it's all about.
Curious, if anybody wants to learn more about you, your services, your writing, anything related to your world, where can they go and find that out? Well,
if they go to Google and just put Amos Smith author, all my stuff will come up, and they'll see everything. Just a bunch of interviews and books and website and so on. But yeah, I think the most expedient way to kind of get into all that is just Amos Smith, author, and it'll come up.
Wonderful. Amos, hey, thank you for taking some time out today. Good luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate your time, appreciate your podcast.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, music, and spirituality around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.